Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the International Dermal Institute. This is our very own industry expert webinar series. See, a lot of you are joining in with us today, and we're so excited to be sharing with you a very important and impactful topic. So while the rest of us are joining, just a couple little housekeeping rules, just so you know, with a webinar, it's just a little bit different. So while you're joining, take a look at your screen underneath your bottom bar area, and you should be able to see there are two opportunities to chat and interact with us today. So that's going to be your chat box, and that's great for comments, interacting on questions that the speaker might share with you. Even just a chat box, just say hi, let us know where you're tuning in from. We're so excited to have such a global opportunity to reach out to everyone. The other opportunity you have for questions directly to the speaker, that's going to be on your Q&A chat. So again, take a look there at the bottom of your box on your Zoom, and you will see everything from chat. So everyone's using it already. Fantastic. So I've got my chat box set up here so I don't miss any of your comments today. And then Q&A, really use that specifically for addressing questions to the speaker, because at the end of our session today, we are going to have a fantastic Q&A opportunity to really ask those questions. I can address them to our guest, and then she'll be able to give those answers to you. So we've got a lot of people joining, and we're so excited. And it's a couple minutes past the hour, so we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started. So our topic today is actually brought to you, of course, by the International Dermal Institute. And if you're not familiar with IDI, as we call it, of course, this is our organization that started in 1983 that really brings postgraduate education at a very elevated level around key topics for professionals around the world. So we're excited that this is actually kicking off our industry expert webinar series with the International Dermal Institute this year in 2022. So this is our very first one. And of course, we do like to do these quarterly. So stay tuned for more webinars that are going to be coming your way. So our topic today is so impactful and so critical, and we are excited to have an expert with us today to bring to you understanding and treating darker skin, and introduction and insight. And this is really about bringing the confidence into the industry and successfully treating darker skin. And it's a way to use education as a path for us to keep growing and learning and training together. So what are we going to be learning today? Well, a lot of information, but as I mentioned, this is an introduction and insight. So as much as we'd love to cover everything, we have a limited amount of time, so we really want to hone in on these three key areas today. So our webinar is really based upon more that cultural and scientific intelligence. So we're going to kick off by learning about our culturally intelligent client care. Then we're going to head into the mid part of our webinar today, and that's going to be all about creating effective communication and consultation, which is so critical to treating the skin. And then we're going to explore skin concerns and ingredients for melanin-rich skin. So this is a progression in our webinar today. So let's get started by meeting our brilliant guest speaker, definitely a colleague and a very close dear friend of mine, Charmaine Cooper, who is with us today. Also, she's on Instagram also known as the @SkinTheologian. So Charmaine she's passionate, she's knowledgeable. She is everything that we would expect in a elevated trainer who brings to you today all the information and the enthusiasm around our critical topic about understanding and treating darker skin. Now, Charmaine is not only a renowned instructor and trainer, that she's been working and been in the industry for over 20 years, but she's also an author and a podcast host. So I was excited to share her two newest publications here for you on the slide. The first one is the No Compromise Black Skincare Guide. This one's great for client focused. And I'm so excited, actually, just a couple weeks ago here in February, Charmaine launched her second book, which is the No Compromise Black Skincare Guide for the Pro Edition. So her achievements are not just limited to being an author. There is so much more, and I'm so excited to have her join us today and kick us off. So welcome to the webinar, Charmaine.
It is an honor to be here with you, Beth, and the entire community at the International Dermal Institute. Right across the world, I am so elated and honored to be here with every single one of you. And I'm seeing the chats pop up, so just know I'm sending virtual loves and kisses and all of that good, warm stuff to you as well. It's honored for me to be here. All right, so let's jump on in. And I think just like with what Beth said, everyone, wherever you are coming in from and connecting from, what we do in our industry is all about building better bridges of trust. Before we go into anything that we're going to be covering today with treating melanin-rich skin, any of the content that we plan to present and to engage with you in, I think we've got to lay the proper foundation here. And that is, how do we create that bridge that is better, stronger, firmer, for sure footing? And as we know, we live and we are working in a client-centric industry. We have been, we've known that. And if you were on the IG Live last week with Beth and myself, we kind of touched on this. But Beth, what I'm noticing is that our industry has been morphing. And if it hasn't completely, it continues to morph from being client care oriented, which we love, nothing will change there, but we're now adding different tiers and different layers to that. So we're shifting and morphing from client care to being client aware. And what that simply means, everyone, is that we've got to be aware of the various narratives that come with every single client that we get to treat, that we get to engage with. And therefore, how we communicate, how we engage, how we create a space of invitation for our clients is nothing to be taken lightly, because that's going to determine how effective those better bridges are built. So we all know that rapport, client and skin professional rapport, is the bedrock of what we do. We can't have strong rapport without continuing to put effort towards building those better bridges. And therefore, we have to take a look at the word that we're calling culture. Many of you are aware of it, but we're going to take a look at the culture not only within melanin-rich skin and the obvious, which is what we're going to touch on, but also we're going to inspect the culture of our treatment spaces. What culture are we creating? What culture have we created? And are we willing to cross-link and to allow a cross-culture environment in our treatment spaces? And whether it's renting a room, leading a team, having a chain spa, or whatever capacity that we're teaching in, we want to be able to make sure that is a fundamental aspect of what we offer. So I've got a little bit of an interesting research that I want to share with everyone, and that's on our next slide. You might have come across this, or you might not have. And this is really talking about the invisible realities of culture. So we're seeing pictures here that you're like, okay, what's happening there, Charmaine? Well, there is a phenomenal scholar. She is a woman's research scholar and academic, and she specialized in really unpacking the invisible cultural realities that are around us every single day in every single aspect. And her work really kind of took off in the mid to late 80s. Her name is Peggy McIntosh. Now, what Peggy McIntosh did is that she challenged individuals to take a look at the invisible cultural realities that were literally around everything that we do, and see how these cultural realities either serve us or they actually operate to be a disservice to us. So serving certain groups and not serving other groups. So this was a challenge. She put out there an invitation for individuals to go into your local drugstore, 1980s, right? Not now, 1980s, and go find a simple bandage And we understand the concept of a bandage is to camouflage, make not obvious the wounds that we have and to conceal them while they're healing. So we noticed right away in the study that the flesh tone bandages out there were only appropriate for Caucasian skin or lighter skin. She noticed, and her research confirmed, that individuals of darker hues were not able to find a simple household medical product to conceal their wounds. I remember scraping my knee in the 80s. I remember being a kid, and it was nothing for me. I thought nothing of it, put that cute little beige Band-Aid on my knee, and it was great. However, her research confirmed that the bandage, something simple and unbeknownst to us, was serving a certain group and not serving another group. This, interestingly enough, got amazing traction decades later, everyone. You have seen this in your drugstores, and really Johnson & Johnson has led the charge here by launching their campaign of Band-Aids. So their brand is Band-Aids that really support all hues, every single range. But isn't it interesting? It only happened in the summer of 2021. This was research that Peggy put into the books. It's now very popular, heralded work, but in the 80s, it was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I know as skin professionals and spa owners and clinic owners, we have seen this seep into our industry. We've seen improvements with foundation ranges, thank goodness, and we're seeing it really take off. We've seen great improvements from various companies and marketing companies and various leaders in our industry to widen the spectrum of SPF options to really support all skin hues. So we're seeing that it's changing. And however, we've got to be able to look at these maybe more difficult realities that we may not have ever really considered before and investigate within ourselves and our spaces. Are we operating in a way that's servicing a group and maybe doing a disservice to another group? Not intentionally, because that's an oxymoron. What we do is we care for clients. But remember, we're shifting from being client care oriented to being client aware oriented. So we've got to be able to investigate and do some reflection. And it's okay to grapple with some of these difficult concepts, because in our culturally diverse, globalized clientele that we're seeing today, we can't afford not to, because the narrative of our clients matter. I'm going to say that again. The narrative that our clients come into our spaces with, they matter. We want to build better bonds and better bridges of trust. So let's talk about the word culture. So I'm going to ask for you, light on the keyboard or phones, individuals, to jump into the chat. When you hear the word cultural intelligence, put in what are the synonymous words that come to mind. What does cultural intelligence mean to you? So we've heard of emotional intelligence. We've heard of, oh, she's got great social intelligence. But what does cultural intelligence mean to you? Are we seeing anything that's popping up there, Beth? Just want to hear some of the thoughts. Awareness of diversity, that's a good one. Oh, not able to hear you, Beth. It's okay.
There we go.
Yeah,
Is that better?
Yes.
Let's see here. We have awareness of diversity, awareness of different cultures apart from your own. We also see connection, awareness, person's belief, being aware that we are different but yet the same, which I think is great. We're looking at understanding the different factors that impact people, mindfulness, diversity. So definitely think some great comments that we see here in the chat, Charmaine.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, you're on the ball. You're on the money. You've hit it right in the bullseye. And really the official definition, and you've all really done a wonderful way of just expressing what it means to you, but the official definition is, it is how well you engage with a collection of behaviors, a collection of patterns, habits, beliefs, traditions, and even practices. So it's not about acknowledging all of these different categories, but it's how well do you engage with a collection of different cultural beliefs, some of which reaching ancestries back. So we've got to be able to diversify, but also to sharpen our own ability to see how well we are. We're living in a 21st century industry, societies, and our clients are diverse. They're migrating all over the world, which is what's making the beauty of our world so appreciative, because we have cross cultures everywhere. And so when our clients come in, we've got to be able to be those leaders in cultural intelligence so that they feel safe and they can actually feel welcome in our space. Now, I'll say this, for spa leaders, and I believe everyone watching and participating today is a leader because you touch, you have the power of touch. For spa leaders, clinic leaders to be able to sharpen their cultural intelligence in our industry, I believe it is arguably the most consistent variable with dignity, respect, and social responsibility. I'm going to say those 3 words again. More than 3 words, but you know what I mean. Dignity, respect, and social responsibility. To the degree that we as skin professionals or leaders and our teams display dignity, respect, and social responsibility to our clients is the degree to which they will feel that. You know, don't tell me you care. Let me feel that you care. So this is something that is intentional for us. And to help us to understand whether or not we are culturally intelligent, we've got some great points that we want to be able to support your self-inspection. I've got 4 questions: motivation, knowledge, strategy, and action. These are arteries, if you will, from cultural intelligence. So what is your cultural intelligence motivation? For instance, what is the energy or the interest that you and or your teams have or your students have about diversifying and getting to know other cultural beliefs and collections and patterns within your immediate clientele and also your future clientele, because we're always wanting to build and grow. What's the level of interest? Don't put it in the chat window necessarily, but I really want us to reflect on this. What is the level of intrigue, interest, and energy put towards that? So that's going to tie us right into knowledge. Cultural intelligence knowledge, meaning, are you aware, and someone in the chat said it earlier, of the similarities and the differences within the cultural groups represented in your clientele right now? Are you aware? Are you observing? Are you noticing that many of them have different narratives? And maybe there's not a lot of diversity in your space right now. But these are things to consider. What about the strategy? Your cultural intelligence strategy, our third one, really is, what strategies have you put in place? Or what strategies are you willing to put in place with you and your teams and your students in order to develop a flexible repertoire of responses at any given cultural situation? Do you have a strategy? And what is the action? Cultural intelligence action is, what are we going to do about it? Pretty simply. And if you were to implement cultural intelligence, how would that look? How is that going to improve really your goals? And I want you to think about your goals existing right now in your space, in your treatment, in your business. What are your goals and targets? To what degree has cultural intelligence played a role into that? What are the hindrances to you achieving those goals and those targets for your growth this quarter, next quarter, the rest of this year? And how can cultural intelligence with these 4 arteries help to support you. And breathe. If this sounds labor intensive, it's not intended to. I do definitely not want you to be overwhelmed with that, but it is meant to be reflection intensive. This is going to take thought. It's going to take a response. It's going to take time for many of us. I don't want you to rush and react. Beth and I are not here to share with you, go do this, go and charge. No, because that could develop an unfounded confidence. It could develop something that's not stable, and we are working to build better bridges. So with that being said, let's take a look at another quick exercise. I'm not sure if any of you have seen this picture before, but it's kind of fun. So get your fingers ready again. Tell me, what do you see? And in the same breath, what do you think is happening in this picture? What do you see? You see a very fancy car. What do you see? And what is your interpretation of what's going on in this picture? Car parked over the lines, I'm seeing. Someone is double parked. Yes, bad parking. In a building. Okay, oh my goodness, they're popping through. And as they continue to pop through, it's interesting that we are all looking at the same picture. Would you agree? We are all seeing the exact same picture. However, our interpretations probably vary. And even if you aren't quick to the draw and getting that chat in really quickly, you might have, in fact, I'm going to challenge the might. I almost promise you that you have already allowed your brain to run ahead and decide what has happened here. What a self-entitled executive. Can you believe this person just thought that they could double park and take over the parking lot? How self-entitled. That could be, possibly not, one narrative that your brain just went to right away. A second one is no. Oh my goodness. This is obviously a parent that had to get their child to daycare, and they were rushing and they were late, and they had to make sure that they didn't get them in late, and it was a 2-door car, so they couldn't focus on parking. So there was a little bit of a passionate perspective there. And maybe none of the following, but you might be thinking, I know what happened here. This person parked while there was snow or ice on the ground, and they couldn't see the lines. So it wasn't until the snow melted that they realized that they double parked. Same picture, and I know it's silly, but 3 separate stories that I just gave us, 3 different narratives. The point of this exercise is, everyone, we cannot make a conclusive summation of what has happened just based on what we see. Without further information, we cannot make an assumption. And any type of assessment, allowing of our minds to run ahead, even if we're completely silent, any type of running ahead in our minds is going to really reveal more misinterpretation at a high risk level. We put ourselves up for a high risk of misinterpretation when we quickly and too rapidly come to an assumption. And so for those of us who've experienced this before, you can take it in terms of your driving. If someone has just cut you off, your mind, come on everyone, your mind already goes to what has just happened, but we don't have enough information. Applying that into what we do every single day, it cannot happen without our consultation card. So we're going to talk about this in more detail. And next, we're going to be really unpacking not what we should have learned in our undergraduate studies, but rather the CQ, the Cultural Intelligence Card. Beth, did you want to say anything there?
Yeah, no, I think this is great. I love the exercise because it just gets us thinking about, I didn't have enough information to make the decision. And I think that's so critical when it comes to the point of understanding your consultation, which leads to the correct type of treatment. And it's also not about just what we're seeing as a skin therapist or kind of going down through our consultation card, Charmaine. I think it's also, you and I have talked about this. It's about what do we recognize, of course, as a skin therapist and understand, but what type of communication are we having with our client? How are we getting that information from them if they are, sometimes clients are willing to share everything, and sometimes it takes a little bit of extra coaching or extra questioning to really get to the heart of what's going on. And I love this next part that we have for everyone is about, using this cultural intelligence that you are strengthening, right? You're working that like a muscle and bringing that into the consultation. So if you could take a moment and kind of go through these areas of how it is slightly different than just a traditional consultation experience.
You got it. Absolutely. And I think we all already know this, that one consultation, one approach never fits all. Everyone is to be respected as an individual. Now, we're going to be talking about the CQ. So this is going to be another, remember, we're doing layers. We're going deeper. This is still introductory in our series today that's kicking this off, but we are going to be going deeper to what our regular consultation card is. So we might be repeating some of the things that you already know, which is amazing. We want to strengthen those. So let's talk about language. So we're going to spend more time on language on our next slide, but I just want to kind of preempt us with the importance of communication. Obviously, we know it's body language, it's the tone that we use, it's our eye contact, it's a whole other slew of things as well as we have learned. But words in cultural intelligent consultations do have a little bit of a weightier hold. I'm going to bring a balance to that when we go into our next slide, I promise you. But we are going to first take a look at these other elements that will better support us in when we are deciding what words to use, especially when treating melanin-rich skin and if the client isn't of the same ethnicity as we are, so that we can obviously sharpen our skills as skin professionals, regardless of our own ethnicity and our own race. So let's begin with the objective and the goal that we have, not the client. So we're going layers deep now, that we have of asking these questions. A culturally intelligent questionnaire is going to help us as the skin professionals that we are to be able to understand, one, how this client communicates, and it's also going to give us insight into some of their patterns, some of their beliefs, but we also want to not mirror or mimic, but get insights to how they communicate so that we can help to try to communicate that way as well. At the same time, our objective and our goals, we've got to keep our questions specific and clear. No skirting around the issue. If we want to find something, we want to keep our questions specific and clear. Always professional, but you'll understand a little bit better when we talk about a specific skin concern that's prevalent within the melanin-rich community. So objectives and goals, that's for us. And then that's going to help to navigate, shine the light, if you will, on the path that we're going to be taking within this CQ consultation. The next 3 bullets are going to highlight research-based approaches for clientele, things that you can translate into any industry. But I found that it really spoke volumes to me when I was assessing our own industry, because every single person is to be treated individually. And we always talk about customizing and catering and tailoring the journey experience of our client. So we have the analytical client that is science or factual minded. So we want to apply an analytical approach. There's also transformative approach, the more creative, the more expressive, the more narrative, deep and rich client. So this is all about results, right? We're going to talk about that in a minute. And then of course, relational approach and the beautiful keystone of connection. So the analytical approach is where you and I, as a skin professional, the expert or the coach, that we come from a professional perspective only. We leave personal opinion to the side. This is where we talk about ingredients. This is where we talk about series of technology treatments that we would like to take them through. This is where you refer to classification measurements and classification scales that you might have already incorporated into your practice. And the reason why we want to emphasize here is because we want to remove for this client at this particular phase, because you can do this whenever you're discerning that it's right. You want to remove the element of personal opinion. You are setting yourself up as the skin authority, the friendly, the welcoming, but the skin authority in that client's life. Keep it analytical. This is where it's not about, oh, I don't want to say the wrong word. Refer to your science. Refer to the classification terminologies that we've learned or that you are employing within your practice. However, don't make the mistake of just leaving it there. You want to marry it with the relational approach. In fact, I'll even dare say the relational approach is to be interwoven in every aspect of that client's experience with us, because that's connection. We're people. So analytical for that client, but you also want to marry it with relational. Transformative approach. I love this because we're talking about cultural narrative. This is where you can actually create a narration of beginning, middle, and end. You are taking the client in the arena of their imagination through a process. And through that process, it's going to take incorporating new habits, new practices, new series of treatments with you, new ingredients, new practices that might be foreign to the client, but you're guiding them through. This is where we're going to go, like that skin coach. Transformation is amazing because you're creating an image in the client's mind that all of a sudden they see this new value and they don't want to do anything to disrupt or to interfere with that transformative narrative that you created and painted in their mind's eye. Yes, use your pictures before and afters, but I'm talking CQ consultation before we even talk about the pictures on Instagram and wherever you're posting. So transform them here first before you can transform them here. And then we have, which is for me, and I believe all of us, the kingpin of approaches. That is the relational approach. The relational approach is relating it to the client, relating it to where they are at, and also being able to hear their story. Remember, we talked about a collection of beliefs, traditions, practices. Let them share their story in a safe space. So we are doing more listening. I know most of us know this already, more listening than we are talking, but it's very, very strategic because we're helping ourselves to be attuned to their bents, to their practices, to what they place value on. And so when you connect the first two approaches, analytical and transformative, with relational, you are able to really kind of create a tapestry of a wonderful experience that feels rather unique to every client. I'm like, oh, he kind of really knew how to engage with me. Remember, it's never about shaming. It's never about guilting. It's always about creating a safe space to build a stronger level of trust. And so when we talk about these foundation stones, now we can take a look at language. So remember, analytical, transformative, and relational. With those in our back pocket, now let's talk about language. And I really want to, in particular, talk about language choices around skin tones, because especially for skin professionals, when we are working on clients who don't look like us, we don't want to offend. And I've heard those in my engagements with various skin professionals. Beth, I'm sure you've heard this as well in various classes right across the globe, that we don't want to offend. So when we're talking about a melanin-rich skin tone, how do we address that skin tone? I'm going to pause there. That was a pregnant pause because I want you to really think about that before you read the characteristics on the left side. The reason is, it is less about the actual word as it is to you as a skin professional to discern what is right at that moment. It's got to be right for you, because I'll tell you, a client, before I even talk about the client, if you feel uncomfortable using a word, I promise you that client feels it. It's the untalked about elephant in the room, but they feel your discomfort, and immediately it builds that wall of between you and them. So they're not able to feel as confident as they may have wanted to, because they sense your discomfort. Your discomfort can be translated to any person. You can feel it. So before you hang all of your hats on the word, there is no cookie cutter word. It is about using those foundation stones first that we talked about, analytical, transformative, and also your relational, and then assessing where the client was, the objectives and the goals that you found, how they talk, how they communicate, and what feels right to you. And then from there, having an authentic conversation with the client around their skin tone, around their skin concerns. And so as we now look at characteristics of skin tones, we know that there is no one size fits all. There are darker skin tones and variants. There are variations within darker skin. There are medium skin tones and also variants within medium skin tone. And there's also light skin tone with variants in light skin categories. Now, we understand that we can also often have heard melanin rich. That's something that's commonly used as well, but it has to feel right for you, and you have to be able to do that in a sensitive way with the client as well. So when you are talking about these characteristics of skin tones with the client, marry it with the analytical approach. I bet some of you were already thinking that. So for instance, our professional terms are things like we talk about with the Fitzpatrick Scale or other measuring scales that we have incorporated into our practices, skin, ethnic classification scales. That's professional. So let me give you a classic example, because we're going to spend a little bit more time on Fitzpatrick a little bit later in the presentation, but let me give you a classic example right now. Okay, so Joanna, based upon our assessment, you have what I would call in between a medium to darker skin tone. And according to our classification scale, that puts you at a X. I'm just going to say that. So what that means, Joanna, is today I'll be able to safely and effectively offer this treatment for you, X, Y, Z. So here you heard me take words of a skin tone, acknowledging there are variations, but I've married it with the analytical approach, professional terms, and I tied it with a bow with the relational approach. What this means, Joanna, is today I'm going to be able to give you an amazing, safe, and effective treatment with XYZ. That is how we submit that you want to have a culturally intelligent conversation with your goals for the client. Now, we are obviously going to have to talk about terms to avoid. And on our next slide, we're going to spend some time unpacking maybe a few terms that you have commonly heard and maybe that you have even used. I know I have heard this constantly in my tenure within the industry, and we're going to submit some terms to consider instead. Remember, we never want to classify a cultural group or group of individuals into one particular peg or pot, because every individual is different. So here's a common term that we have heard often. All darker skin is thicker. Hands up in the chat if you've heard this before, or you've read this, or clients have even told you this. Raise hands, raise hands. Okay, I'm seeing it. I have heard this until the cows come home. And that simply is not true. We submit instead that you can consider sharing that skin can be more compact. And it has a lot to do with, how we care for the skin and how the rates of the cell regeneration is going on. But not all darker skin is thicker. Some is thin, Some melanin-rich skin can be delicate as well. So this is a misnomer that actually has been perpetuated even in dermatology first year schooling. So it is a relic belief that many actually do carry. So you may even hear your clients tell you, my skin is thicker. But this is where you can, with a smile, in a professional way, consider using different terms. So another term, all darker skin does not age. Beth, I wish this was true, okay? But it simply is not, because we've got to be able to talk about the aspect that all skin ages no matter what your hue is. Now, scientifically, we have been able to see, and we're going to talk a bit more about the melanocyte cell and its wonderful function. We've been able to see that melanin-rich skin tends to show signs, outward signs of aging about 10 years later than a lighter skin, but it does age. We've got to talk about the intrinsic as well as the extrinsic factors that play. So darker skin and all skin ages. We need to specify how. Shadowing in the skin, perhaps. We're going to talk about some aging signs at the end. There's skin tags, so skin growth, loss of tone, and the next topic, which is going to talk about pores. So here's another term we heard, and I'll just tie the next two together. All dark skin is oily and all dark skin has large pores. Simply not true. However, even though enlarged pores do accompany oily skin, some melanin-rich skin can be dry, dehydrated. There's so many other conditions that are really put into the mix. So what we want to do is help to offer an opportunity for a client to hear a new narrative. We're integrating cultures of skin health beliefs, right, within their existing cultures without slapping on the wrist. So here we're talking about now enlarged pores can also be attributed to premature signs of aging in the skin because we're losing collagen, we're losing elastin, we're losing that supportive network. And then the last one, all darker skin does not get sensitive. There was a great IG live that you and Karen did a few weeks ago. Amazing, that really delved into this on sensitive skin. That simply is not true. All skin can be sensitive and inflamed and experience characteristics of sensitivity. In fact, we know that melanin-rich skin, the number one concern right across the globe, always stems right back to hyperpigmentation. And hyperpigmentation cannot take place without a trigger. Come on, you science gurus out there and you ingredient lovers, you know what that trigger is. Inflammation stimulates hyperpigmentation. So whenever those inflammatory pathways and cytokines and mediators are triggered, that's triggering the melanocyte cell, which is going to give us pigment. We'll have more aspects of that in a few moments as well. So these are terms that we really encourage us to try to practice to integrate into our conversation with our clients, and to also take a closer look at what we are doing in our own spaces amongst our teams and ourselves. And so I want to take an example for all of us now and implement some of the things you just talked about. I'm going to be taking an example to talk about a specific concern around skin bleaching. You can take that and you're going to be able to apply it to anything else. So I'm going to show you succinctly in a few moments when we talk about how to really have culturally intelligent conversations around matters really that could be awkward, could be a little bit, I'm not sure how I want to address this with this client. So let's talk about the science first and foremost. So skin bleaching has been confirmed by research that it is a global phenomenon. In fact, $8 billion of the health and beauty skin bleaching creams can be traced back to women of color purchasing. So that's women of color around the world spending $8 billion a year on skin bleaching creams. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to be able to understand that what we've been doing in the past has not necessarily worked for us. slap on the wrist. Don't skin bleach. That's hazardous for your skin. Yes, those things are true, but have they been effective? $8 billion tells you on the table that it's not necessarily that effective. So can we maybe investigate another approach? And here, we've got to be able to look at the origins, the traditions, and the generations of skin bleaching. Now, research also confirms that skin bleaching really can be traced back to the Elizabethan days and the colonialism of various countries. However, interestingly enough, everyone, skin bleaching did not take its meteoric popularity until 1950s. Listen to this. In the 1950s, major countries like Africa, especially Africa, actually had their independence movement in the 50s. So paradoxically, there were parallel projections where African individuals were now making their independence moves into societal networks, and skin bleaching skyrocketed. I wonder if that's coincidence, or I wonder if that's insight for us to see that it is a little bit deeper. Could it have been the pressure to fit in? Could it have been the desire to be accepted? Could it have been the desire to be able to develop a sense of worth and beauty? Possibly so. And again, I know what we do. We love the skin. We love to connect with people. That's why we're in this industry. We're all about care. So this is difficult for us to be able to grapple with. But grappling and understanding these tensions that have existed socio-politically and in the history is paramount to us creating new contours of cultural intelligence spaces in our treatment spaces and in our industries. Skin bleaching has impacted not just Africa, it has impacted Asia, Southeast Asia, North America, the Caribbean, where my family's from, and we migrated from Africa to the Caribbean. So as we globalize in our industries, we are seeing these beautiful clientele, some different beautiful cultures coming into our spaces. And we're telling them not to bleach their skin. Again, we understand that there are known confirmed hazards. So top hazards, hydroquinone skin bleaching, thins out the skin. We'll talk about that a little later in our hyperpigmentation slide. We also know that mercury is high in toxicity and is found in the traces of the liver and also the organs like the bladder and the kidneys. And steroids, even injections and IV sessions. I know you're like, IV what, Charmaine? We're going to talk about this. There are popular treatments around the world that have injections to help to interfere with the melanocyte production. We're going to talk about that at the end, but again, it's unfounded with science, but it's still a very popular because this is culturally and traditional and generational deep. So let's take a look now and see, how do you approach that client that comes into your space? You see the gray tone, you see the lack of radiance, pretty certain that they've been bleaching their skin. They haven't told you. You're pretty certain the skin is super sensitive. The knuckles are a little bit darker than the skin tone. It's flat, it's transparent or translucent. Well, we've got 6 questions. Again, this is around skin bleaching as an example, everyone. I want you and your teams, maybe after, to be able to take this template that I'm going to be giving you and apply it to any major concern that you want to deal with any of your clients. So here are 6 CQ consultation questions to consider that are different and maybe from a different angle from your basic consultation cards, okay? So overall skin health. So you want to ask the client about how they feel about their overall skin health, not how they feel about their skin, how they feel about their skin health. This will help to give us an assessment of whether they value the health, the things that put their health at risk, or if they don't value the things that put their health at risk. If they're focusing just on their skin and how it appears. This is insight for us. Our next question we want to talk about is one that we already know. And there is also the priority on the concern. And we've asked this in our consultation, but allow the client an opportunity to be able to share with us, to share with you, I'm concerned with my skin tone. And if they don't, again, you've given them the opportunity. What are their top concerns? If there's something they could change today, what would that be? And then the third question we want to talk about is medication and topical creams. Now, some of you are like, Charmaine, Beth, that's already in our consultation card. And you are right, it should be. But do you know that some of our consultation cards, we have removed the specificity of, are you using currently or have used a skin bleaching medication, tablet, or topical cream? Our submission is, you might want to consider putting that back there. Give the client an opportunity to say, hey, yeah, I have. Or if they don't, that's completely up to them. So with that being said, that should be a part of our standard consultation. Our next one is all about, obviously, we want to talk about SPF, because that's a big issue within the melanin-rich skin community. So talk about SPF habits, not necessarily are you using SPF, but when did you start using SPF? This is really important because these last two, we're quick to say, is she using SPF? Yeah, great, move on. No, that's great, but let's make it greater and more enriched by understanding the habits and the reasons behind SPF. So notice the last one is SPF purpose. Ask the client, what are their key reasons why they've used SPF, when they started, how it's been used, how often, and see if there is an atrocious fear. Oh gosh, I just got to stay away from that sun. Apart from premature aging, obviously we know it's the #1 cause of premature aging, but beyond that, is there a fear factor of that sun? That could be an insight to a value within that client's collection of thoughts and narratives. We also want to determine if they are using SPF, a great thing, to hide or mask a value that's not serving them. I hope that makes sense. Instead of saying, you do need to use your SPF, that's great, but you really got to stop using these bleaching creams. And that can have the client feel, well, I don't feel comfortable you sharing that with me. You don't know where I'm coming from. But instead of doing that, we're going to integrate and affirm good skin practices and good values, and integrate other values that might eventually start to compete with those other values that are not serving their skin. What will happen eventually, everyone, is the healthy practices and trust that supporting that, those values that we're incorporating into our practices, will eventually override those other values that are not serving their skin. It is not our role to slap on the wrist. And I think that is, and I've been guilty, I've done it. That's where our industry has been for so long, especially around these quote unquote taboo topics. So these are some awesome examples for, I'm going to encourage you to try with your teams to maybe take a look at your consultation card and really reassess what you want to ask, what levels of follow-up questions you want to ask as well, and challenge yourselves. I hope that makes sense. Beth, did you have anything else you wanted to add there?
No, I think this has been great. We've been getting awesome comments in the chat box, especially around the topic of skin bleaching that you covered so perfectly. That is such a huge concern with some of our attendees who made comments in the chat. And I think a lot of things have come back of saying, like, how do I bring in the right question, right? How do I say this correctly? Or how do I not make someone feel bad for maybe making a decision based upon something that they've inherently learned or they were taught is actually the right thing to do and they didn't know. And then, how do we help them feel comfortable, right? To bring that information to the forefront. And I think the CQ consultation questions that we have right here, Charmaine, are so imperative that it allows, it's almost just like, like just stepping into each area so that you're able to better assess I think personally, but then you're able to also assess from a scientific, manner of like, what are, question could come about it, like, well, what are the side effects? Since I am using this cream, I wasn't really, no one shared with me what could be the side effects that could happen to my skin. So really diving into this area a little bit deeper and doing the research, I think it is really critical. One of the things I want to head into based upon that actually is the fact of consultation and communication. And of course, consultation card, as you mentioned, kind of rewording it, also to just looking at it, understanding it from a different lens, so to speak. But there's also other resources that are out there for skin therapists and professionals in the industry that I think a lot of us have used throughout the years. And an example of that would be like the Fitzpatrick scale. And definitely the Fitzpatrick scale has its advantages, but it also has some limitations, especially if we go back to where we were talking about language choices around dark skin tone variants or medium skin tone variants or light skin tones. You're not just 1 through 6, right? There's definitely a variety of beautiful skin tones throughout the world. And we can't necessarily just put someone into one bucket or into one category. So I'd like for us to kind of move into talking a little bit about the second resource, which is very common, but yet maybe giving us a way to think about it differently and searching out other resources that I think can help support us as professionals to make the right choices around treatments and ingredients.
I love that. And, this is a quote from the Journal of Dermatology, the British Journal of Dermatology. So what we're about to share is nothing new. It's actually quite known within the industry and the medical industry. And that's exactly what Beth said. There are some great supportive tools that have been absolutely amazing and heralded and should be. However, the British Journal of Dermatology says that we envision a system that would not have a biased baseline and would identify subtle variations, like we talked about earlier, not to the naked eye. So it's so comforting to know that dermatologists are singing the same song. We are on the same page and we are working together to make a difference. And so we've got to talk about some of these classifications. And the number one that we all probably are aware of, if we haven't implemented it specifically on a more regular basis in our practices, we have learned it in our undergraduate studies, and that's the Fitzpatrick Scale. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to go over everything. I know that we know, but just for those of us who may need a refresher, Dr. Thomas Fitzpatrick created this measuring scale to determine the likelihood of physical, chemical, and thermal predictability of once the insult is there, so predictability to an insult. With that being said, Dr. Fitzpatrick created this scale in 1975, 76 also. With that, we understand that the origins were when I was just a little baby, and I'm not going to go into more detail, but it was actually years ago. And so there are advantages to the Fitzpatrick scale with its measurement 1 through 6. That is that many dermatologists have seen the benefits. It's been used to determine how the skin's predictability or the irritation levels or response factor to UV radiation, thermal injury, all of the other practices that have really taken off over the past decades. Now, with that being said, we have to acknowledge that there are some obvious limitations as well. The British Journal of Dermatology highlighted one of them, and that it was founded actually on a biased foundation, meaning that Dr. Fitzpatrick created this with Caucasian skin in mind. There were only initially 1, 2, 3, then they added 4 a little bit later, and that was the scale scope of the Fitzpatrick scale. It wasn't until later on they decided to add it on Fitzpatrick measurement 5 and 6. So the foundations were really the core focus for Dr. Thomas Fitzpatrick. However, It wasn't to denote that it was just an afterthought. However, it was late to the party with 5 and 6. With that being said, we understand, because we've just argued on these preceding slides, that we have variations. We cannot just fit anyone into 6. Now, this is not a knock against Fitzpatrick. Many of you, not all of you, we know are already using Fitzpatrick Scale as a supportive tool, as a guide. But to use, and this is where the huge limitation is, to use Fitzpatrick as your tell-all and your green light, red light, or amber light only, solely, is going to offer you a plethora of limitations and also some complications. So we incorporate other supportive measurement scales, and we're going to be talking about the opportunity for more of an objective approach. Many of the dermatologist community have actually found Fitzpatrick to be very subjective. That means only looking from the inside out. We've got to be able to truly embed an objective approach. And so we suggest, and many of you have already incorporated many, if not a few more of these, other supportive measurement scales. I know this is tiny, but it's so good. I mean, I'm just going to list a few. There's so many there. You can go online and research it yourself, but additional measurement scales that support Fitzpatrick, support your discernment and your expertise, are like Robert's scale, the Taylor hyperpigmentation scale, the Lancer ethnicity and race scale. Because listen, you can have someone who is one ethnicity and they come in, but their Fitzpatrick scale level is telling them that they're on the equivalent of Caucasian skin, but they've got various diversities in their culture, especially mixed skin or mixed cultures. So whereas you think you're safe treating them as a Fitzpatrick 1 or 2, their pigmentary predictability is going to be erratic, and they can actually get a lot of scarring. So using any one of these are great, but you've got to notice this as well, that there are a lot of these that are still based on self-reporting. Self-reporting is itself very subjective, and it is varying because everyone self-reports differently. It's like, I call myself this, but you might call me this. So self-reporting is not a stable foundation. And so what we want is to consider all of these, but we're also looking to the future, because AI and a lot of companies and modality companies are working with AI to create a truly objective approach to assessing the skin. Now, embedding that in the technology and modalities and the scales that we have grown to use and get familiar with, but that AI is really exciting. And, you know, there's a major company that you all know if I said it, and they're about to launch something really exciting in the next, I think, probably 2022, if not the end of this year. So again, well, this is 2022, 2023, if not 2022. So the future looks bright, but the point being is that we don't want to hang our hats all on one particular scale. Use your expertise, your professionalism, your conversation, your CQ consultation that you're having with the client to determine what is really going on in that narrative. Beth, I know we're going to go into another topic in terms of really talking about the genetics within our cultures of our clients that we see. But was there anything else that you wanted to share here with additional scales that we have used, that you have heralded as well?
Yeah, I think this is such a fantastic way just to give everyone kind of a broad awareness of, especially when you think about what we're taught in your like undergraduate programming, and then where you're moving from, you know, going forward as a licensed professional. And it's really about, you do have to really do your own work at times. Yes. And then there's one thing I want to encourage everyone is that this isn't something that you're just automatically taught. And what we're trying to do, and I feel like Charmaine, for you and I, are always, again, advocating that this just needs to be a natural change. Like we need to see that, you know, learning more with whether it's Lancer, Glow-Gal, the Roberts scale, you know, how to use Fitzpatrick, you know, properly. Because I think sometimes it can be used in a way it's just generalizing. That's right. Versus for what's made for. So I love the information that you brought here as well. There's been some great comments about what you see see may actually be entirely different from what really is. And I think
100%.
the comment that we have here in the chat, like that's just a great way to think about, again, using additional measurements, tools, consultations, communications, and really engaging your client into that as well. I do want to go into, back to the comment. It says what you may see may actually be different. And of course, that takes us into genetics, and really understanding, of course, how melanin and our own skin color comes to play when it goes into understanding how to make those choices in your treatment. So of course, melanin, we see this daily in ourselves and everyone that we're around. And genetics, of course, plays into our constitutive color, what the color of our skin that we're given to by birth versus it being more facultative, which of course is affected by your exposome, whether that's going to be sun exposure, stress, chemicals that come into play, anything we've applied to our skin. I think back to what you mentioned about skin bleaching, about really where it's changing the tonality of the skin and how it kind of disrupts in the melanin disbursement. So understanding, yes, again, genetic wise, and then talking to the client, bringing in those scales and measurements is going to be helpful, but it's also going to be important that we really, again, understand how does the melanin actually work internally. So back, we had our cultural intelligence. Now it's looking into our more into that scientific intelligence, going into understanding the types of melanin. Now, a lot of you who are tuning in, of course, probably like, yes, of course, I understand melanin. I know how it works. I know what color is going to be given, whether it's eumelanin for more of that black brown pigment, or pheomelanin, which is more that yellow reddish pigment found more in a lighter skin tone. But oftentimes your clients do not know this information. So there's also a lot of assumptions. And I think oftentimes incorrect information that gets kind of, floats about, I think, in our industry around this. So understanding that, of course, melanin is what gives our skin pigment, but most importantly is how does that key cell work, the melanocyte cell that actually gives the amount of melanin and deposits melanosomes into the skin. An interesting fact here, I think a lot of our clients probably don't understand necessarily that melanin actually, protects us. And this is really, again, bringing like that umbrella cap, like protecting it over the nucleus from things such as, especially from UV damage. Now, Charmaine, I'd like you to go into a little bit here about the fact that oftentimes people associate the amount of melanin in their skin with a natural SPF factor. So if you could expand on that here, and then let's talk a little bit about the differences then in the melanosome disbursement when we're looking at when we're looking at the skin changing from sun exposure to basically just our natural component.
I love that. And I think we're amongst great company here because we find the skin so fascinating. It is the most brilliant organ, and the melanocyte cell has been always one of my favorite cells to learn, to teach. I saw a comment saying, I didn't read all of it, but was a comment saying that when you're teaching, this is what you hone in on. Love this because it's such a rich cell. So understandably so, we know that it forms that umbrella, that nuclear cap, so to speak, over the DNA to protect the vital DNA, the chromosomes, the brain of the cells. But I love how we can understand that the melanocyte cell, that octopus dendritic cell itself, has the ability to defend against UV radiation. Now, watch this, because we said that and our clients have run off with that, right? They're like, see, I don't need SPF. You just told me I've got natural SPF. This is where, Beth, I often say, we've got to be careful with saying, yes, did you know? Because it is true scientifically that a lighter skin does tend to have about a natural SPF, and we'll see this in the next slide shortly, of about SPF 1 up to 4. And then a deeper skin, a melanin-rich skin, maybe of a different shade or hue, a lot deeper, can have up to 13%. I'm very careful when I communicate that to clients because I feel like a lot of clients wrestle with that. It's like, well, I've got natural SPF. This is why my grandma is 150 and looks great. Sorry, I'm just joking here. But I've heard that from my own family. I've seen that in my own family. So although there is a natural defense ability there because of more melanosome density that's protecting the cell DNA, it can malfunction. And it can actually destroy the melanocyte cell once it's malfunctioned. And that is a whole other category that we don't even want to go into because it can actually be very toxic and life-threatening. Interestingly enough, Beth, the melanocyte cell, as we also understand, has the brilliant ability to scavenge its own reactive oxygen species, so free radicals. This is why we want to help support the melanocyte and the cell to do what it used to do. We want to incorporate ingredients with antioxidants in our SPF to support what it's trying to do, but it needs help. So this is why it's so amazing to introduce those great ingredients like antioxidants, because it already is a natural scavenger. Let's help it do more of what it was created to do. On our next slide, we're going to be actually just kind of unpacking a little bit more, as we said, the responsibility of that melanocyte cell. You can see in this great picture here, it's responsible for giving and dispensing pigment through these packages of the melanosomes into about 36 different cells. Fair skin and or the deepest in hue skin has a ratio of 1 to 36 approximately. So it's not about the quantity of pigment that's being transferred in those melanosomes, it's about the quality. We'll see that in the next slide as well, when we just kind of, here it is. We're going to magnify that for you. I love what we put here together. There's a drawing at the bottom. Some of you have already seen this. You know, it's like the back of your hand. And lighter skin and its variants shows up more of like a grain of sand kind of melanosome package. So the pigment is more translucent, but you can see it's also sparsed out. So you can see some of the ground substance within that melanosome structure. A medium skin tone and its variants have almost like that analogy of peppercorn. So it's a little bit more filling up of that melanosome package, but also you can still see some space there. Melanin rich or darker skin tone and its variants has more of what we compare to coffee bean like structures. And the picture above you're seeing is an actual micrograph with a magnified picture of how these brilliant melanosomes that are being dispensed from the dendritic cell, dendrites, to form almost a protection above that nucleus, the DNA of the skin cell. This is where it is so important for us to be able to understand that we need to protect this natural function. What causes this function to malfunction at an erratic level is inflammation. We're going to talk about this nearing the end of our presentation, but inflammation, remember we said earlier, some people believe that melanin-rich skin cannot get inflamed. That's absolutely impossible because pigmentation is such a prominent concern in melanin-rich skin. So inflammation triggered by the Langerhans cell is what stimulates the melanocyte cell. So if we can control inflammation, if we can control that irritation in whatever formats that it shows and characterizes itself in, we can control hyperpigmentation. All right, so let's keep going, and we're going to kind of show us in a cascade of different skin conditions, hyperpigmentation being one of them, but we're going to be covering some images that maybe we're not very used to seeing. And I'll say this way, and it's proven through research that even dermatologist textbooks have about 4 to 18% images that are seen on melanin-rich skin. So dermatologists, first-year medical students, have actually not seen a lot of these conditions on melanin-rich skin. So I take my hat off to Beth because she was able to find these great pictures because it's not common. It's not even common in stock images if you're trying to do this for your Instagram feeds. So this is why we've got to take time to educate ourselves and to have courses like this and continuing courses as well. So let's talk about some conditions that you will likely see within melanin-rich skin. The first one I'm going to highlight is a very common one. About 1/3 of the melanin-rich community has this condition. You've seen it, and it's called dermatosis papulosa nigra. Very common, benign growth, and it comes with age. It comes with exposure to light, to sun, and it actually is just a blended kind of a growth tag, not to be confused with the regular skin tags, but it is more of a glob or mound of growth of the skin on top of the skin. It can be removed, harmless, it's benign, but there are risks for certain skin tones of keloid scarring, regular scarring, and we've got to be able to be very careful before we're rushing to have these removed. And it must be removed by a professionally trained individual, but they are removable as well. Our next one we want to talk about, which is quite common, but hardly seen, and I love this picture, provided by a staff member, and this is eczema or psoriasis, some type of dermatitis. Now, did you know that the majority of children that suffer from eczema are children within the darker skin community? The majority of children globally that suffer from this. Again, children can come in and come out of that, but eczema and psoriasis does exist within melanin-rich skin. It may not show up itself as the same, but it is itchy, it's dry, it's scaly. There is inflammation that you can see. It's common within the creases, the folds, wherever moisture settles, stress, weather, a lot of things trigger it. Ladies and gentlemen, you know all this, but I wanted us to see this actually on a darker skin because this has often been misdiagnosed. And many times within children, it's not treated because it's being misdiagnosed, because it's not seen enough. Our next one is pityriasis alba, and this one is quite common in young skin, especially children as well. It is not common for it to linger and stay. It usually comes and goes. Again, pityriasis alba, very common within melanin-rich skin that are younger, children especially, or youth that are in our midst. And again, a lot of us, I just saw a chat, I had this as a child. A lot of us may have even experienced that with our own children or ourselves, and we just grew out of it. Not to be mistaken by someone who you're suspecting is using skin bleaching items. So it's important for us to know that these do exist. Our next one is a controversial one. I know not within this community, but it's controversial out there, especially with your clients. Rosacea. Can skin of deeper hues have rosacea? 100% yes. And these are the telltale signs you want to look for. Is the skin warm? Is it flushing? You may not be able to see the redness. This picture was a great one because we can actually see the pinking in the skin. It's not acne. I know we say this to our clients, but your clients may rush to an acne line because they think it's acne. But is it warm? Is it flush? Is it itchy? Is it tender? Is it always warm to the touch as well? So again, we cannot cure it. And again, it can be managed. We want to be able to help to calm and soothe the skin as well. Keloid scarring and hypertrophic scarring is very common, not exclusive to melanin-rich skin, but very common within the melanin-rich skin community. Keloid scars differ from a hypertrophic scar because it is a wound, and the healing process causes the fibroblastic cells to overproduce collagen in its healing process. And the keloid scars actually stretch and they go beyond the initial site of the wound. So it's actually kind of spidery sometimes. I know my mom, she had a vaccination years ago, and I remember playing with her keloid scar as a child, just being so fascinated with this. But hypertrophic scars can be more raised with that scar, but they're usually localized to the boundary of the initial wound. Keloids go beyond the boundary. Hypertrophic are raised and they actually stay within the boundary of that wound. So these are just a few. Again, you may know of a lot more others out there, but we are desirous. So is many journals of dermatology desirous to see more of these images, even in our own practices, of these skin concerns within the darker skin community. Let's continue and let's actually observe some conditions that you know very well, but maybe you aren't really confident in identifying them in hues that are richer, that are deeper, that are more melanin rich. So we know the aspects of these conditions. I'm not going to teach that here. Beth and I don't need to do that with you. You already know it. But with a dehydrated skin in a darker skin, you may see more of a grayish hue. You may see more of an ashiness, is what sometimes your clients will even use that word because it's very commonly spoken of when we're talking about hydrating our own skin. So you want to look for, obviously, the creping and what have you, but look for the tightness, how they feel, and that gray hue, the dull, the lack of shine, and we can definitely infuse that with great ingredients. Breakouts as well, this is really important, but when you see inflammatory lesions or papules or pustules, you may not always see that redness. You may see more of a purpling, and you're also going to see it's going to progress into more of a browning spot because inflammation has been triggered. Remember, inflammation's pathway will lead to melanogenesis, the pigment formation. Hyper and hypopigmentation, other pigmentary concerns, very, very commonly found in terms of when we talk about the hypopigmentation issues and hyperpigmentation issues. We're going to be covering those key ingredients in a little bit more detail in a few moments of how to avoid that and spot that in the consultation card or in the client's conversation. I love the spot and picture though, because this is about sensitivity in a darker skin. This is actually the clavicle area. And I love how, because we're always, and I was guilty of this, that you can't really see sensitive skin on a darker skin or a melanin rich skin. Look for the purpling. If it's a fairer, darker skin, remember there are variations within dark skin, understanding the various measurement scales that you've employed in that consultation engagement, you can see purpling, you can see the ring, and you can see if this is on its way, it's starting to turn brown. It's already started its melanogenesis, its stimulation of pigmentation. And of course, aging. We'll spend more time when you see a beautiful woman here. We'll talk about the characteristics of aging in a darker skin, but aging happens to all of us. We're going to be looking for loss of tone. We're going to be looking for enlarged pores. We're going to be looking for those dermatosis, papulosa, nigra growths. We're going to be looking for other aspects, more dryness in the skin. And the list goes on and on. The point is, you are likely seeing these every day, but we want to practice communicating these with the client and helping them to understand that we have solutions, but we've got to start with understanding exactly where the concern lies and how we're going to treat that is what we'll communicate to the client with their agreement, of course. So let's take a look at one of the major ones. We've been saying it, peppering it throughout the entire presentation today, hyperpigmentation. Hyperpigmentation is absolutely the #1 concern for most melanin-rich clients. And your clients have expressed that. And it's not just exclusive to your melanin-rich clients. All clients have issues with hyperpigmentation, but we're honing in for this class today with this type of hyperpigmentation. So post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, I won't spend time on that. I know we've covered that to a certain degree already, and most of you are very well versed in post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, trauma, acne, scars, you name it. But melasma, this is quite interesting. Melasma, as you're seeing in that first picture there, is usually stimulated on those apexes of the face. And often at times in that cloasma butterfly kind of pattern. It's interesting, everyone, that this is where the UV light hits first. So it's important that when we're communicating to our clients, we communicate to them that SPF is a non-negotiable. don't even like to say that word because we're being culturally intelligent, right? We're helping to merge these new values into their belief system. But if we help to educate them that UV light does manifest the sensitivity based upon the hormonal change or fluctuations happening in that individual, then it will help to create a new transformative approach, and they're going to see what they want to avoid. What are some key ingredients that come to mind? I'd like you to put it into the chat window, everyone. Some of your favorite ingredients that you love to recommend or that you go to treat hyperpigmentation. I'm going to name a few. Let's see if some of you already have them in there as you're popping them up. And me and Beth might have forgotten some. Oh, someone just took it out of my mouth. Niacinamide, one of my favorites, absolutely amazing because it's a multifaceted vitamin from the root of vitamin B5. So extremely healing, and it targets hyperpigmentation. Don't forget lactic acid. Don't also forget some of our favorites like phytic acid. Helps to improve cell proliferation, and it also hydrates the skin, that lactic acid especially. I love, love, love the aspect of helping to increase cell renewal, but being very careful at it. Now, we won't have time to go into more of the controversial ingredients, but you've got to be careful that there are some ingredients that don't support a hyperpigmented skin or skin that's already melanin rich, because we've got to be careful with that approach. So you want to incorporate oligopeptides. You want to incorporate peptides that help the skin to function in a natural way. Did I see it here? Yes, retinol, and I saw ascorbyl phosphate, obviously teamed up with magnesium. Magnesium ascorbyl phosphate is your stabilizing form of vitamin C, amazing on the skin. Oh yeah, okay, they're all coming up. See them, you feel me, and that. Fantastic. These are ingredients, and these are ingredients that we want to look for and educate our client on to look for in their formulations that they are expecting us to recommend for them. Let's go on.
These are really great,
yeah.
Charmaine. I wanted just to jump in here because everyone has been doing such a fantastic job, especially with the like niacinamide and hexylresorcinol. And really, again, finding alternatives to brightening ingredients. Yes. And I think that's a key thing here in that language is we are looking at brightening the skin. We're not coming through as lightening the skin, because that, again, going back to your CQ, definitely your cultural intelligence in your consultation is looking at helping to brighten the areas of hyperpigmentation, such as post-inflammatory pigmentation. Plus, I think this is also great to have that kind of list thinking about like what you should try, what your clients should try, and what maybe they should not apply, but making sure we're coming through in that scientific component of it, of being like, why should I not use hydroquinone? What are some of the issues? And of course, we know, there's, for us as skin therapists, we know the issues that arise by using high levels of hydroquinone over a long period of time, but our clients may not. So I think it's, again, coming back into that of giving them, here's your options. I know you want to think of something to kind of just eliminate that dark spot, but let's start first by working on ingredients that are going to help brighten that area and also be preventative. So I think this is such a great exercise here, and what everyone is putting into the chat is fantastic. So you mentioned earlier too that, again, that post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation is going to be usually, in most cases, stimulated by inflammation. Yes. So with that, we will go into our next slide here and talk a little bit about the inflammatory response and why inflammation is the #1 overlooked skin condition in darker skin.
I love that. And again, I don't love the fact that inflammation is what's stimulating our pigmentation, but I love the setup because we do have to explore those ingredients, like you said already, Beth. Why not to use hydroquinone? I know that many of you are pretty well versed with that, but steroids, hydroquinone, they sensitize the skin. They also help to thin the skin. I think there's other courses, cases that we understand and research that's confirmed that those sorts of ingredients actually can do a lot of damage to the nervous system, also within the structure of the skin and the constitution, causing blood pressure issues, and the like. So we want to avoid those harsh long-term ingredients. But inflammation as the number one overlooked condition is absolutely something that we cannot overlook as well, because it's not always evident and as obvious in the melanin-rich skin. But you can see that welts are possible. You can actually look in that far left corner, the pinking around those welts. There is clearly an inflammatory reaction underway here for this client. We talked about the client who has mild rosacea already. We talked about the bruising, the inflammation, but look for itch, look for tingle, look for dryness, look for tightness. These are things that your client will confirm and affirm as well. And then you'll be able to also help to confirm by letting them know, okay, what we want to do, and our goal today is we want to calm, soothe, hydrate. We want to replenish what the skin is trying so hard to hold on to, but maybe doesn't have the wherewithal to produce that as it should, because we know that there are certain genes that are deficient in a sensitive skin, and melanin-rich skin can be sensitive. So we want to shield, we want to restore that barrier function. We want to use ingredients like, jump it in the chat, everyone. We want to use ingredients like shea butter, like aloe. We also want to incorporate great ingredients like I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but they sound familiar. Rubus, Idir extract or raspberry extract. There's also ruscus extract. These are ingredients that strengthen capillaries, that actually strengthen, and they're rich resources of amino acids for the skin as well. You also want to incorporate your calendula, your lavender. I love argan oil, whoever just put that there. Thank you. I think that was Raymond and Shelley. Love argan oil. I call it the liquid gold of our industry because it is multifaceted, healing. And you also want to avoid the common ingredients that many of our clients, we teach this in our courses. When we're teaching, when we're educating our clients, we teach this all the time. You want to avoid specially denatured alcohols. You want to avoid fragrance. You want to avoid the artificial fragrance. You want to avoid high levels of pH cleansers, and you want to be able to restore that acid mantle in the skin at all times. Avoid those sulfates. Those high sulfates can also tribute. And again, we always employ the less thought, which is not as much inflammation with your heat and your water, and staying balanced within the activities and lifestyles that you do, and of course SPF. All right. Anything else you wanted to throw in there that I might have missed there, Beth? No, we're on aging.
Nope. I think we're good. I mean, I was just looking at everyone was putting in there, and definitely the oatmeal is also a great application to that.
Vena sativa, yes.
Yeah, especially when you're looking at inflammation. And if we can slow down or inhibit that inflammatory response, then we're also having it's like a twofold effect on lessening the possibility of post-inflammatory, right? Hyperpigmentation that can come into that as well. So let's head into aging. I know this is a big concern. A lot of people have questions about this. I know you mentioned SPF already being obviously something to keep, to be able to protect the skin, but what are some of the characteristics or things that I think that maybe some of our therapists may not necessarily know right away, or also too that a client is not sure of, some like the language that we talked about earlier?
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think it's such an important topic for us as professionals to be able to familiarize ourselves with this major misnomer and the truth around aging skin, period, but in particular aging skin with our melanin-rich community. I grew up in this family. I still have conversations around this. So one of the things I've noticed is that there has been a longevity to youthfulness in my ancestors before me that arguably is brought to the Thanksgiving table whenever Charmaine comes around. But it is scientifically proven that approximately 10 years of our aging, premature aging, is shown up later on. So it's shown up 10 years later than a lighter skin in comparison. That's not to say it's not happening. Remember, the skin is a perfect memory bank. It remembers everything, and it just gives you out what you gave it, greater than you gave it and later than you gave it as well. So it's important not to take those youthful years or younger years for granted. And if we can help the clients to know that this is the best time to go ahead and protect your skin and invest in your future skin, we're going to be at a better place with actually having their buy-in in this process as well. Remember, we talked about the melanocyte cell having that natural up to SPF 13. This can contribute to that 10-year slower rate of premature aging. It doesn't mean that that mechanism is your automatic SPF. Aging is more of the loss of tone. You're going to see the redistribution of fat within the skin, more of the jowls at the bottom of the face. This is why peptides and collagen synthesis ingredients are so important, because we are also seeing shadowing in the skin. I'm not talking hyperpigmentation because of the sun. And I'm not talking about hyperpigmentation because of inflammation. I'm talking about aging. In a melanin-rich skin, you will see different tones, and often at times you'll see a shadowing that just comes out of nowhere. And that's usually from 40s and above. And again, compounding, the aspects of really your menopausal clients and your menopausal women, premenopausal, that's amplifying that as well. So there are so many things that we've got to be able to have as authentic conversations with our client to know that we can gracefully age. Everyone has a choice, because extrinsic aging makes up the majority of our aging, even for melanin-rich skin. And honestly, about 95% of that extrinsic aging is because of unprotected exposure to UV radiation. This is why SPF is so important. Ladies and gentlemen, we say this towards the end because SPF, and some of you are probably nodding in your spaces where you're watching this, has been the #1 area of challenge to convince clients of melanin-rich hues that it's important. It's changing, and it has changed wonderfully. And with more attention from companies and from professionals that really are leading this charge, we're seeing a difference. But this is still something that is still prevailing within the darker skin community. So ingredients that we want to incorporate, put it in the chat. Obviously, we've got our peptides, our glycolic acid. Don't be afraid of glycolic acid on certain percentage levels. Lactic acid as well is also great to target the sun-induced hyperpigmentation. Lactic acid has a natural lower pH, so you don't even have to use as much percentage because it already has a lower pH that is going to help to renew those old skin cells off. Peptides, arganin oil, I'll throw that in there as well. Someone said that earlier. Jojoba, wild yam, retinol, the quintessential ingredient. And I'll say this, because we couldn't go into treatment plans here, Beth, for our group that's joining us today, because it is our introductory level. But when you're priming a client for chemical peels, your retinol is the way to go. You want to prime the client ahead of time, and don't be afraid to have them use it periodically throughout the week, weeks before they come to see you, for your series of peels that you have for the client. You will see in an aging skin that's melanin rich, you will yield better results and more favorable outcomes. So this is absolutely amazing. With that being said, we've got to tie all that into the crowning ingredient, which is our SPF that has antioxidants built in there. And this really comes from a great place of understanding that everyone is susceptible to the onslaughts of UV radiation. And as Beth mentioned earlier, there was an amazing study that was done in South Africa. And they took 3 categories of individual ethnicities. And they put out the invitation for this poll And the study for 1,000 people, 930 odd responded and said, yes, I'll be a part of it. So we had Caucasian Eurocentric clients, and we had individuals from Southeast Asia, Indian clients, and we also had Africans. So a deep, rich skin tone. And this assessment, this study was, how aware are you of the side effects and the elements or the importance of SPF? And I'll just summarize this because there's more charts actually in the full study, but as we share the resources with you, you can actually check it out yourself. It's very fascinating. This research categorized individuals of 5 different age brackets, okay? And with that, in the various ethnicities. And all of this pointed to in South Africa, individuals of African descent, darker skin hue, had less awareness of the causes of cancer, SPF side effect, not using SPF and its side effects, and the skin cancer awareness was so much lower, and most of them were not wearing SPF. They weren't taught it from children, from the age of children, even growing up into adulthood. So we saw that from the younger than 20 all the way up to over than 50. And this proves that just education, taking the time to inform a client, a friend, a family member, can actually help to save someone's life. It's not just about aesthetics. We know we want to create a wellspring of youth in our skin, but we're all aging. But it's about really prioritizing the health of the person. And we're going to end off with the fact that African clients within this assessment actually were more prone to a top tier melanoma, a form of cancer, and it's called acral lentiginous melanoma. Next to basal cell carcinoma, this is the most common cancer that is found in darker skin. And you may know this very well, everyone, but Bob Marley actually died from this particular cancer. It started in his toe and it was ignored. He saw it, but he ignored it, thinking it was more attributed to his athleticism because he was a soccer player as well. And with that being said, it actually spread to his lymph, and from there it was beyond repair. It is absolutely reversible when caught early. But according to that study that we saw, and we can take that out of South Africa and apply it to North America and all around the world, according to that study, there was little to no individuals that were even triggered to get self-inspected, to get a doctor to inspect them, to even know what to look for. There was lack of awareness around skin cancer. And so for us to be able to defer and refer someone to a dermatologist, not pretending to be a doctor ourselves, we can consider how we do that, and we can know that can help to support the lifespan of someone. So I wanted to share that because all of that leads to obviously our care for the client, but we also have to couple that with what we said at the very beginning, our awareness of the client. Being aware, knowing how to have these conversations, how to integrate these new supportive variables and new practices and habits within the existing client narrative will actually help support the client and our rapport with our client as well. Beth, was there anything that you wanted to add here as well?
I think the study that you brought up, Charmaine, was quite impactful. I've had a couple questions and everyone's saying, hey, can you go back to that chart again? So I'm just going to go backwards before we go forwards. I think a lot of people were excited and interested in kind of learning about this. I know you and I even did our own type of SPF questionnaire survey.
Right.
And we were quite surprised with the response of it being that I just really wasn't aware. It wasn't a hot topic growing up. And we did, that survey was interesting because it spanned through all countries, right? Globally, we sent that out. And I thought it was some great insight into that as well. A lot of chatting here, each one helping each other, everyone helping each other about what do you recommend for SPF? And of course, yes, a minimum of SPF 30. Absolutely agree with that is what we would recommend for someone, anyone we know looking at an SPF wearing on their skin. We like to say, of course, at the International Dermal Institute, minimum of SPF 30. Make sure you're applying it, enough. There's always that application is how much is enough. And of course, making sure you're applying it, and timely before you go out into the sun, and reapplication.
Huge.
Of SPF is so huge. So I think it was interesting to have everyone kind of pipe in about skin cancer awareness and wearing SPF. And then even obviously minimum of 30, but getting up to the SPF 50. I mean, I think that's definitely for most, I feel like that's really like the way to go to get that full protection. I know that you have also too some kind of what's next for our skin therapists and our professionals attending this conference today. What can they do, to actually take some of these great pieces of information that you've shared and put it into action? So I thought I would kind of pull this up for you to review some of the next steps that can really round out this webinar before we head into Q&A.
I love the aspect that so many of you responded and joined this webinar today, because it speaks volumes, it speaks hope to our industry. And that's why we are in the best industry, I believe. I'm a little biased in the world, but it shows that you are seeing this value in this. So I'm gonna challenge us to take time to respond, not to react, not to, okay, if I have a client at 3 o'clock today, I'm gonna do all what Charmaine and Beth just told me. You want to take some time with yourself or with you and your team and self-inspect on professional CQ integration. Where can you enhance? Where can you maybe relook at how you do your consultation for your client? If you are going through a series of set questions, maybe we want to retweak those. Self-inspect and take a look at your professional angle on CQ in your current business. Assess your confidence levels. You don't ever want to fake confidence. You don't ever want to have reckless confidence or unfounded confidence. You want to have culturally intelligent confidence. And I know that we're speaking to fantastic professionals out there because you're here, and you will continue to grow more courses, conversations, more study. We'll share some resources with you at the end. And again, some of those studies, like that study that I shared with you in 2017, read it. It's so chock full. I just couldn't pack it into one slide. So I just gave you a gloss over, but read that. It's so insightful. Review the resources, your educational material, and invite your clients as well as start these conversations. Hear their stories. Take the time to hear client stories. Create a space where they can be themselves. You can't force someone to trust you, but you've got to be able to earn that trust. That takes time and that takes effort. It takes intention. So those are our call to action, what next aspect that we want to leave you with, because we know that your clients, they're longing for you. This is a time more than ever that people are longing for touch, and they want to have education around that. They want to feel safe in your touch as well.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much, Charmaine. It's been great to have you with us here today on this Industry Expert webinar series. Now, don't jump off too soon. We're going to do a little live Q&A with Charmaine. We're going to keep her on the line for a little bit as well. But if you are looking to get your hands on this recording, if you've had to jump off and take care of a client, or you've just had to go ahead and move on throughout your day, please go on to dermalinstitute.com. We will be uploading our recording to our website. And you can also take a look at articles, webisodes, even training videos, and what education is coming up next. So we also have courses that are actually live streamed, and those are our skin series courses. So the next one I wanted to let you guys know about is Skin Series, The Power of Olfactory Receptors. That's going to be coming to you on March the 16th. So again, jump up onto dermalinstitute.com and be able to register for those courses. If you are tuning in again from another location, another country today, we're so excited that you're able to join us. Again, this recording will be put up live onto the dermalinstitute.com website, which of course is accessible to everybody and anyone. And if you need, again, some great resources, I mean, again, I'm going to have to do this because I have to plug my friend here. You've got to get your hands on Charmaine's books. So these are ready to go. Charmaine, if you want to let them know where they can actually go up and purchase your books that you have, I think that would be a great opportunity as I head us into our Q&A.
Sure. I wasn't sure if we were supposed to see you, Beth, but I couldn't see you. But the books, you can actually go to my Instagram handle. That's the quickest way to go. And you can see the link there that can take you right to your market of where you could get either an ebook copy downloaded today, and or you can also just go right to getting your own paperback copy shipped to you of either volume 1, as Beth said at the beginning. It was just such an honor for me to create this resource for yourselves and for clients. And then the pro edition, which is the green one, which is for you that are all about, okay, talk to me. I'm going to get into this cultural intelligence aspect on a more severe or serious level. With that being said, there's other resources I think we'll be sharing, Beth, from the research that we put together. So I'll send that link of that resource of research to you, and some of the other great resources that we incorporated into this actual training.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right. So I do have some questions for you, and I'll kind of go through these. I've got some in the chat box. I have some in the Q&A. Definitely everyone is enjoying this. Oh, I just had someone say, hey, can you hold the books up again, please? Oh, absolutely. I can do that for sure. So we have this first one. This is the one that came out here a few months ago.
Summer of 2021 that was released.
Okay. And then the pro edition that Charmaine was just mentioning, which came out, I believe was about mid-February. This is the one that's in the green edition, and this is going to be the pro edition as well. So really great for a professional therapist to really dive into this a little bit deeper. I think this one here, again, a lot of my friends have read this and have found this to be so helpful for them just on their own skincare advice as well. So this is a great, as far as like coming from a client perspective. All right. So questions for you, my friend. Okay. I'm going to kind of go down through these as well. There's a question here going back to, I think, some of the conditions that you brought up when we were talking about like the dermatosis. Oftentimes we're also talking about a little bit more like rosacea and a lot of the other different types of maybe not necessarily common skin conditions all the time, but something you might look out for. Someone's asking if the pityriasis alba is connected to hormones. Do you have any type of connections of hormones to some of these maybe skin conditions that we reviewed today on a darker skin?
To my knowledge, that's such a great question. Thank you for whoever did ask that. To my knowledge,
Julie.
Thank
Julie.
you.
Yeah, thanks, Julie.
That would be more of a dermatologist question. I know that in my research, when I was actually inquiring about that particular condition, it's unknown, but it's found to be very common within children and younger people. But like one of our participants said today, that they actually experienced that themselves when they were a kid and they grew out of it. My niece, I remember she had it for, Alicia had it probably, sorry, Alicia, she wouldn't be watching this. She had it for about maybe 3 years, between about 7 to about 10. And then she just grew out of it. But I can't say concretely that it was linked to hormones. That would be a dermatologist question to ask.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now I've had some people on here too, some of our attendees. I think this is probably a lot of people have had this questions, and I know I've talked to a few skin therapists say that, I was taught different things in school, or I was taught different things in work, or I wasn't even explained that there even was a difference when I'm working, when I'm working on darker skin tone variations. One of the things questions here came about using salicylic acid and glycolic on a Fitzpatrick skin 4 through 6. Is there a percentage that is appropriate? And I think this goes back to where we were talking about hydroxy acids being a great option to treat the skin.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. It's something that we should be asking, because different percentages of our acids do determine and can adjust certain functions of those acids. So salicylic acid, if you have a client who is also oily, acneic, and they also have tendencies to bacteria formation, salicylic is a great ingredient to incorporate into that use. Again, we understand that above 2% is a certain function, underneath 2% is strictly anti-inflammatory and antibacterial. So you have a lot to play with. But I love, and Beth, I know that you would agree with this as well, I love never hanging my hat on one acid. I love incorporating acids. I love, and I've seen over our years of working with clients, I've seen the benefits, including teaching right across various markets, the benefits of incorporating multiple acids. So I would incorporate, if a client is concerned with oil, excess oil, and acne, and aging, a merger of them. And you can actually see them with lactic and mandelic and other ingredients that respect the integrity of the skin, but focus on skin concern.
Right. And I think even back to what you said before is that really, again, priming that skin. Yeah. So if you are getting into using something with glycolic, I mean, a high percentage doesn't always mean better. You can still get really great results, even if we're looking at a lower percentage.
I love that.
It's really, how that client's skin is going to respond to it. And back to what we were sharing about inflammation. If you are thinking you are going to cause uncontrolled inflammation in the skin, that's where we need to step back as a skin therapist and think of, what am I trying to achieve? And can I do this in a progressive versus aggressive application from that? But agreeing with you, yes, salicylic acid is fantastic, as well as glycolic. And again, you just have to look at what we're trying to achieve with that. There's a question here about extractions. And because, again, we know that extractions, if done improperly, can obviously be uncomfortable, number one, but they can also cause some inflammation. So do you have any advice or examples about how to go about extractions in a safe way, maybe something to use or also to not to use?
I am a strong proponent, and maybe this is old school, Beth, but I am a strong proponent of preparing that area for extractions first. It's all about, and I love the theme of what you just said, Beth, preparing for peels. Stronger, more aggressive is not always the right way to go. You want to go for same results, but you want to go in a culturally intelligent and a more appropriate way. So when preparing for extractions, I'm not a tool girl, but I am a modality supportive girl, a modality that helps to soften, helps to saponify, that helps to prepare that area with proper ingredients and appropriate ingredients. And then old school, I'm in there with my hands. I'm actually manipulating, and I'm working a gentle manipulation of the tissue to be able to extract those impacted plugs. I smile, and I didn't need to smile like I'm Sherman. You're smiling right now. I smile because when you're talking about this question, Beth, my mind goes to all the images I'm seeing on Instagram, and I see them all the time. And they're just going in with tools. Right. And you've got to be careful, because you can cause inflammation. Inflammation is the route to hyperpigmentation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then just knowing how that melanin responds, especially in darker skin tone variations, that's where you just have to think, just really, again, I tell people to think about what you're trying to achieve, and then what is going to be not the fastest route to get there, but what makes the most sense in kind of working with the skin. I love that you brought in modalities, and definitely even, going to old school, back to that galvanic dust incrustation. Yes. Microcurrent, there's so many great devices out there that can definitely work in that favor. I do have a question here coming up that someone says, I have a client with darker skin in her late 50s, and she is saying that in the recent years, her pores have enlarged. What could also be the possible cause, do we think, besides age? So we're thinking about later years, obviously aging, we mentioned, obviously can show a little bit more on those larger pores. Is there anything else that they could consider that you could offer?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's very common. I actually strongly encourage us to take a look at the track record of the client. And again, it's never about shaming or ever making a client feel bad, but this is for you as her skin professional. And you can actually see that, as I mentioned, the skin has perfect memory. If there have been years, if there have been years of her not wearing SPF, that is going to change the structure and the texture of the skin. Mm-hmm. And remember, the skin always gives back what you put in later than you did it and greater than you did it. So we could be seeing the pores finally saying, okay, I just give up, because all those years that maybe, I'm not saying this is the case for that client, but maybe that client has ignored the importance of using SPF, maybe in her 20s, in her 30s, in her 40s even. Mm-hmm. Thank goodness she's here to see you now. It's never too late. However, it could be now showing the manifestations of earlier practices that are now showing up. So we can work with that, but we can help that client to understand that it will take time, but we can definitely help to improve them with her cooperation.
Yeah, I think definitely home care is going to be a key component of that. And even, of course, just the right, skincare treatments that are going to be, fitting for, depending if she's got other concerns, right? Going back to your CQ questions, like what is the priority concern, but also too, there's usually a secondary that we need to follow suit. If you have time, I just have a couple more questions I thought would be great to put on here as well. So I'm going to jump over into our chat box because I believe there were some questions in there that I wanted to grab from you as well. Everyone's like amazing, loving it. Thank you so much. We actually had some attendance from Scotland today, so it's great to have them with us as well. Awesome. Let's see here. Kind of like there's so many great comments on this as well. Kind of going through here. What were some of your? Again, I think this is we talked about hyperpigmentation. If you could do us a favor and repeat maybe some of your favorite ingredients for hyperpigmentation on ethnic skin. That was a great question. I wanted to bring that one into play.
Yes. So some of my favorites, we talked about acids already, but it's worth repeating. Lactic acid, I absolutely love that. Because of its low pH, it doesn't have to go high in percentage. I also love mandelic to help to hydrate, but to target hyperpigmentation, let's go into using oligopeptide is one that I have loved for years. Also, Morris alba extract, which is also known as your mulberry extract. There's bearberry. There's a stabilized vitamin C. Vitamin C is hard to stabilize, so you want to make sure that you couple it perhaps with magnesium. Find it in those formulas, or use a powdered formula that's also out there in the industry as well. What else do I love to use? I definitely talk about, I'm going to go the route of chemical exfoliants as opposed to mechanical. Nothing wrong with mechanical. Usually a younger skin is great with that. And a lot of companies and a lot of formulations now are amalgamating the two, chemical with mechanical. But you can go for more bang for your buck when you have that chemical that's going in to renew those skin cells and get those older skin cells off.
Yes. Yeah, I'm definitely, and I'm also loving niacinamide. It's been a hot ingredient for a long time, but it's great for not only hyperpigmentation, but it's also great for aging as well. And then the hexylresorcinol. So we're really trying to get to the heart of the overactive, like tyrosinase, right? We're trying to get into the heart of where can we slow down this erratic amount of pigmentation.
And Beth, I like to say, sorry, I also like to say, because you said it and just targeted that for me. We want to help the client to know that we are going to inhibit, we want to slow down, we want to interfere with the tyrosinase, a natural response in the body. And the hint to help a client understand why hydroquinone and steroids and all of those other things are not good is because they shut down the melanocyte. And the melanocyte function is a natural function. So we want to inhibit the erratic production. So that's why we use the word of slow down, inhibit, interfere, rather than stop, if that makes sense.
Right. And I think that's a great segue into, I've got 2 more questions for you here, and I think we can wrap up, is the clients who are using skin bleaching. Our question here is they tend to get more hypopigmentation and get uneven skin as part of the process. So one, I think it's just, you can kind of going back to what you said about stopping, right?
Yeah.
That melanocyte activity. Her other part with this too was, does it apply to chemical peels as well? I mean, no. I mean, obviously with chemical peels, we're trying to lift up the uneven hyperpigmentation. We're trying to slough off the skin cells that have too much erratic, right, pigment in them that are causing that darkness. But the skin bleaching actually acts on a very different avenue than, let's say, a chemical peel. So could you expand a little bit more on how skin bleaching affects someone when they're trying to lighten up, maybe, let's say, melasma, for example?
Yes, this question is so deep and so important. So thank you. And I think Beth spoke to it earlier on. We want to work on facultative color. Skin bleaching, skin lightening, yes, people may start to think, oh, I want to treat this hyperpigmentation with skin bleaching, but it works in constitutive color. Constitutive color, the constitution of your natural health, your natural skin tone will be compromised. Let me just say it that way.
Yeah.
With erratic production, facultative, we can get those off. We can control that. We can help to get what shouldn't be there off. But your constitutive should be there because you need it. It's your constitution. So that's what comes to mind. A skin bleaching, a skin lightening targets not just facultative, but constitutive, which is why you're going to see those other ailments later on. No defense, irritation, sensitivity, and more hyperpigmentation, as well as your skin lightening, so your skin brightening and illuminating is going to work on facultative while respecting the integrity and the health of your constitutive color.
Right. Perfect. Okay, last question here, because I know we've kind of have kept you over a little bit as well.
I love it. I could be here all day.
So our therapist is asking, it says, may I ask, as a licensed esthetician, a small business owner, and makeup artist, how can I show from the outside looking in that I am a trustworthy professional? I'm always learning, of course, but I want any client in my room or chair to know that I can take care of them.
Oh, I love that.
I know. I thought it was a really great question. It is. It's the heart of this presentation, honestly.
That's the heart of why Beth and I are even doing this. We talked about this months ago. So this is the heart. So that is so warming to hear, because we believe, and it is our passion, that every skin professional should be able to treat every single skin hue, because we are skin professionals. So I love your question because it shows your heart. And I think to answer that, I would say it takes reflection. Go through some of your assessment in how you do your business right now. Continue what you're doing, which is the wonderful passion and care that you desire. But focus more now on understanding perhaps the awareness of your existing clients. Perhaps some of your clients that haven't really had these conversations with you. Maybe have them see that you've got a commitment to education, to constant growth. And ultimately, be yourself. I don't want you to feel like I have to become this culturally intelligent person. That's not what this is about. It was about affirming what you were already doing right, but now just taking a look from a different lens and incorporating things that feel right to you at the right time. And you will allow that with time and patience to cultivate something beautiful and new in your culture of your treatment room, your treatment business. And watch this. The brilliant thing is, in time, that is going to cause those little light flickers of your other existing clients to tell others about you, to create a reputation about you. You don't have to promote yourself. And this is not knocking anything of anybody out there. I don't even know who's on here today, but I've seen this on social media. I treat Black skin. Me personally, I feel like you are a treatment professional. You treat skin. But again, let your messaging, let your conversation, let your education, your professionalism speak for itself. And when they come to see you, allow them to fall in love with you, in love with the results and the treatment and the respect, dignity, and social responsibility that you give them. And it will take time. So continue to do courses and just get out there and start.
I think that's perfect. I think that was a lot. I think what a lot of people needed to hear on our conversation today. And I do understand too that I've had therapists actually throughout our chat today ask to, like, you know, looking at obviously internally, starting from within, having those conversations, making sure that we are client aware, you know, in conjunction with our care. But I think also too, you know, a lot of therapists are saying, you know, do I need to take a look at even some of my consumer facing pieces? Do I need to take a look at my website, what they have brochures, or, you know, and is there something that you can recommend of showing diversity within their business? How, that is a question that came up too. How would you recommend someone do that in a very authentic way?
Authenticity, the key word right there. So
yes.
You want it when you decide to do that, again, after assessing where your goal is for your business, where you want to take your business, what you want to do is remain consistent. I'm going to say that again. You want to remain consistent.
Mm-hmm.
This is February in North America. It's heralded as Black History Month. And as someone who is of a darker ethnicity and a Caribbean background, I appreciate that. But what I appreciate more is celebrating history all year round.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to be quite honest with you. So what your clients will see, what your future potential clients will see on your social feeds, on your website and your brochures and what have you, is consistency. That, my friends, will speak volumes. They may not ever articulate it right now, but they pegged it in the back of their mind. And they're watching for your education, that it is unbiased. Remember, if in doubt, go back to those touchstones that we talked about. Analytical approach. Your posts should be analytical. They should also be transformative. Your posts on Instagram should also be relational. If you have those three, you can interweave cultural intelligence and proper language into all of them. So let the client see that and remain consistent with that.
Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you so much for answering these questions. It has been an informative, exciting, I just think just such a rounded discussion today, especially for all the information that you've shared with us, the interactions with our attendees today. Thank you, everyone. We can't thank you so much for being here with us today and just giving us your attention and your questions and your thoughtfulness and mindfulness around our industry expert webinar series today, which was all about understanding and treating darker skin, an introduction and insight. So Charmaine, again, heartfelt thanks for me as like a colleague, as a partner, as a friend, and just so glad we're able to bring this together. I know you and I have even bigger things coming down the pipeline.
I'm excited.
Exactly. So for those of you who are still with us, again, we are going to post the recording up on dermalinstitute.com. You'll be able to find that as well. And we just, again, can't thank you enough for spending the time with us here on the International Dermal Institute. So have a fantastic rest of your week, and definitely stay safe and stay healthy.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.